Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis and tackle things in the world of football and/or soccer that we think are interesting. I'm Tom Rennie. Alongside me for the programme is top broadcaster, former US soccer player, MLS legend, the impossibly young Brian Dunseth. Hey, buddy, all right?
Yeah. Just coming off my latest treatment of Botox. I'm doing it right now. Just tightening up. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm good to go. How are you? I'm good.
You look amazing. You look incredible. You look youthful and zesty.
A lot of filters.
A lot of filters. Where have you been this weekend, apart from, surgery?
Yeah, no, T.O. Max. Yeah. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've never been. We got to go see Charlotte FC. We spent a couple days down there. By the way, the city of Charlotte, the most kind and gracious people. I mean, deep South, Southern hospitality. Yes, ma'ams. No, thank yous. Here you go, sweetie. Just like,
Is that good?
like,
do you like that?
Yeah, no, it's great, man. Like, especially with everything that's happening in the world today, just treating each other with respect and, holding doors and grabbing elevators and helping people with stuff. Like, it's just great to see. It's just kind of a throwback of the way things should be. But yeah, no, the city, it's amazing. The history in the Deep South is incredible. There's some really incredible stories. There's some really incredible horror stories. But they do a good job in the city of Charlotte of having these signposts kind of all up over around the city and telling the historical relevance of what had happened and transpired literally like in where you're walking. And knowing from like the Panthers to the Hornets to the NASCAR Hall of Fame to kind of just being in the Deep South, the food was phenomenal. Drinks were a little bit pricey. Maxie and his brother came into town, so I got to get to know Max's brother. And listen, it was first time Dean Smith, got to meet him, spend a few minutes with him. He just having a new contract down in Charlotte FC. Was telling you I was a couple minutes late with Ashley Westwood to do an interview. He was phenomenal, gracious with his time, great answers. And for a team that was missing Tim Ream, Patrick Agyemang, and Liel Labada for international window, to see Suleiman Doumbia, who got his debut. He broke his fast literally right before the game started eating some nuts, had a banana and a quick little drink, went out on the field, made his debut. It was phenomenal at that left back position. Wilfred Zaha was extraordinary. Didn't get a goal, but the pass that leads to the pass that leads to goals. He was always highly influential. And then Pep Biel, who spent some time, the Spaniard spent some time at Olympiacos. Weren't a lot of teams that were interested in him, and Charlotte gobbled him up. He was phenomenal. That left foot had a wand. They ended up beating Bruce Arena in San Jose 4-1 when it was all said and done. But overall, just a fantastic experience. T.O. Max and I, we got to see Sir Minty.
Nice.
Running around, big soccer ball with his crown on, and it was amazing. We got to take in Pepas, the song Pepas, where they do the Poznan, where everyone turns around and starts bouncing inside the stadium. Incredible. So yeah, can't wait. First time in Charlotte. Called a game earlier in Seattle for Charlotte. They got the 2-2 draw. But I was getting a bunch of text messages, got to meet up with one of the most knowledgeable soccer people in the South on the East Coast, and Steve Goldberg. Spent some time with him up in the booth. And I can't wait to go back. What a phenomenal experience it was. And on top of that, they take 3 points, and they're going to be a big pain in the ass for Eastern Conference teams over the course of 2025.
So did you get to do the bit where they rise to the throne and you put the crown on like Wolves did last week? So I know they do it all
that
the
was
time,
Pep
but I've
Biel.
never seen it. So he got. Did you get to walk up there though and hold the scepter and all that? No.
I watched. So they do what is it? The monarch of the match. They in pregame they'll.
We don't even do that, and we have a king. We don't even do that. Why don't we do that?
It's part of the Queen City, I believe. Like Cincinnati and Charlotte are like Queen City monikers. So the idea of the crown and the monarch of the match, the pregame acknowledgement of like a local celebrity, someone who's done a great job. I think it was one of their like local weathermen that have been around forever. But then Pep Biel was up he had the black crown on. He was up on, sitting in the chair. It was again, like fantastic culture and environment. The South, there's so many, you think about that hotbed of college soccer just in that area and these major cities, whether you talk about Raleigh-Durham or you talk about Charlotte, even the idea of like Asheville, North Carolina and the mountains and being in the woods. It's such a gorgeous area of the United States. And, thinking about like the Dukes and, the Wake Forests and all those teams. There's a lot of history and culture of soccer in that area. So it's great to see the fans have a winning team to support. And they, by God, they are a real fun team to watch.
If I get the chance to go to Charlotte, I'm absolutely 100% insisting on like climbing the steps and wearing the crown and doing it all. Like that
Yeah.
should be. I'm sure that's part of the stadium tour. Like if tourists get, if it's
There you
not,
go.
it should be. So if someone wants to pay for my travel and accommodation to Charlotte, I will absolutely sit there on a throne. I don't know when I'm going to want that. Anyway, that's the fun stuff done. I've got a bit about my weekend to come, but I'll save it for later because
Okay.
I've got a whole wraparound story to it, which I think you'll enjoy, and I've got a
Love
question
it.
for you on it. Let's start with the USA being at football. Sorry, Tim. So the Nations League was this weekend. There's all the countries that America wants to, I think, invade or buy or something. I'm not sure. The one with the canal, and then the partners to the north and south, or as you might put it these days, enemies. I don't know.
Fair.
The Panama game on back end of last week, Thursday before the Friday
Thursday,
against the Panamaniacs. Love saying that. It's not real, but it should be. And then, of course, the Canada game on the Sunday. Let's start with the kind of overarching theme, the overall theme of it, Dunny, because you, of course, cover the US men, and you've been working with Pochettino and chatting to him and the group, and the PR job. And he's been talking over here on TalkSport as well, which we played a bit of on our Syria shows. And everyone loves Pochettino, right? Including all the Tottenham fans who desperately want him back, but we'll save that for later. He's currently trying to turn America into, of course, USMN Tottenham, so we'll get to that. But this weekend has not gone well, and I'm sure all the goodwill is not gone as yet. But I mean, give us your view on the overall weekend. Now we get to Monday, and it's tough to find the positives as Pochettino would like.
Yeah, I did like a word salad while I was watching the game. And I just started writing a bunch of stuff down. So kind of stick with me. Because the main conversation for Tio Max and I, who we were together on Counterattack, was, the conversation of what do the U.S. men's national team, and specific to Mauricio Pochettino, need to fix, and how do you fix it? Because Mauricio Pochettino post match was talking about, stay with us. Basically, I'd love, it's better to learn lessons now. There's not a lot of team. You think about how many teams have done well in the World Cup that were horrific heading into the World Cup. All this stuff, and there's like moments of inspiration. There's probably moments of some gaslighting, and there's probably moments of some, naivete, understanding that for us on the backside of the 2002 World Cup, a couple of back-to-back Nations League wins. But going into Copa America, that this was supposed to be like the dry run. And, whether it's results or it's individual decisions or it's just collectively not getting it done, that failure at the Copa America changed the trajectory of U.S. soccer forever. You go from firing Greg Berhalter to bringing in Mauricio Pochettino and finding a donor that's going to supplement the $5 to $6 million wages it's going to take for him and his staff to come into the United States. And he started off well. He beat Panama down in Austin in the friendly. They went to Mexico, ended up losing, but it was more of a hybrid of a team. Guys like Christian Pulisic were allowed to leave, and I believe Ricardo Pepi scored a goal. He went back with some concussion protocol issues. They get into the game against Jamaica away and Jamaica home. They do the business. They get in the final. January camp is all historically, MLS based or young, dynamic, future based. And then you get into this tournament, and it's a long flight, right? For everyone coming over all the way back to Los Angeles. You got the feel good vibes of the beach and the weather. But you're going into a tournament against Panama that they're the ones that beat you in Copa America. So there's a weird little dynamic of history. Whether it's the starting 11, and certainly I wrote down a bunch of names. Obviously Anthony Robinson, Johnny Cardoso, Austin Trusty all pull out. That means Max Darfston, Jack McGlynn, and Brian Gutierrez all come in. I think that's more of a product of, the closeness of these players being in MLS, as opposed to bringing guys abroad and having them, acclimate quickly. But Serginho Dest, Miles Joseph, Haji Wright, Luca De La Torre, Aiden Morris, Gianluca Busio, Alex Zendejas, Ricardo Pepi, Flo Balogun. Those are some players that were not chosen, and not because of injury. Dest is probably the one concern, right? What we learned is both outside backs, whether it's Dest or it's Anthony Robinson, huge losses. I constantly felt like both outside backs, like the midfield was waiting for the outside backs to get forward and either thrust around or kind of invert themselves and overload. kind of felt like that was maybe one of the bigger issues. But here's the word salad I kind of threw out there. The window has gone as bad as it possibly could. I don't like the fact that I constantly hearing fight, heart, belief, heart, identity. That's a sobering reality right now in 2024, 2025 is we're, 400 days ish out of a World Cup, and you end up fourth in a regional tournament. For Pochettino, accountability versus gaslighting versus tactics versus identifying players he can trust versus he can't trust. The tag golden generation that's been surrounding this group for a while is an inappropriate one. And we're in a phase of a new identity for this player pool and for Mauricio Pochettino. Gold Cup roster, the tournament and the value. Because also remember, Weston McKennie, Tim Weah are with Juve, Gio Reyna is with Borussia Dortmund. So you've got Club World Cup taking precedence over the Gold Cup. In June, you have Turkey and Connecticut. You have Switzerland and Nashville. So the Gold Cup for me is going to be less about the tournament, which trophies do matter, but it's going to be more about the timeline of the potential 45 to 60 days that Mauricio Pochettino, similar to what Jesse Marsch had heading in with Canada to Copa America last summer, 45, 60 days is a long time. I mean, you'll really suss out the real it's like dating a girl for 6 months. When she says something, you're like, huh? Like, I didn't know you thought that way. Like you have that come to Jesus moment. You'll have that come to Jesus moment in this group. From a fan base perspective, boring. If the fans right now are questioning, if the questions in this group are boring, numb, and apathetic, those three labels are horrific for the U.S. men's national team hosting a World Cup in a year's time. And ultimately, does this group have the chip on the shoulder that has always really been like our DNA, like us against them? They don't believe in us. Everybody thinks that we're just Americans, that we run hard and we fight and we compete. But that's our DNA chip. Like if we lost that chip on the shoulder, that's really concerning. But I think overall, to kind of like watch Thierry Henry's coverage over on Paramount Plus of him taking in the atmosphere, the lack thereof, him taking in the relationship with Pochettino as he has previous, then watching tactically and the players on the field. The 5 changes into that second game. Is it necessity? Is it frustration? Is it opportunity? And then ultimately to see Clint Dempsey just kind of seething on that dais, and then to follow it up with Landon Donovan talking about he doesn't give an ish. It's about fight and grit and representing the badge. And if you don't have it, decline the call up. If I'm trying to think like how damning that is, because a lot of these things are being repeated about that group. And that for me, you can question a lot of things, but if you're questioning the heart and mentality, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe why Christian Pulisic unprompted came out in the post game talking about how much it means to him to play for this club and play for the national team and represent the national team. It's almost as if like these guys are knowing that their character's being questioned. And for a professional athlete, that's got to be devastating.
Yeah, but I mean, with Pulisic doing that, I was thinking like when politicians do a terrible debate or they have a bad speech or they have a bad policy or whatever, the first thing they do is go out and do cleanup. If you're doing cleanup within the first couple of hours of something happening, it's all there, right? And I think anyone who watched the game will have seen that maybe there was a lack of intensity, maybe the mindset was wrong. Like, I don't know exactly what was wrong, and I want to get a little bit more of what you think of it. But let's talk about the setup. Let's talk about the way Mauricio Pochettino set them up, maybe more in the first game against the Panamaniacs in the second game, because the second game, it's a third place playoff. Nobody gives a shit about a third place playoff. Like it's fine. You want to be third, I guess. You want to win every game you play in.
But these two did though, because the complexity of this is U.S. Canada and the qualifying success that Canada had underneath John Herdman. But it's also the Jesse Marsch conundrum, because Jesse Marsch feels as though, and he's kind of insinuated this over and over and over, that it feels like he thinks he was effectively promised or given or was going to be chosen to be Greg Berhalter's successor. They go into a different direction. After the World Cup.
Not the first time.
Yeah, sorry. Time. No, this goes back. Yeah, the first time. This goes back to when you're being put through this process, and who effectively with Matt, who effectively was he going to choose as the general manager of the U.S. men's national team? And for Matt Crocker, this whole process, whatever it was, the two finalists were Jesse Marsh and Greg Berhalter to retain his position or be given a new contract to continue on following the fallout of everything that happened with Gio Reyna's parents. There's so much upfront frustration, anger, disappointment from Jesse that when he took Canada, it was almost like a big F you. Sorry, Tim. And by the way, Tim is okay. He has survived. We think he has survived.
We think he's not here right now, and he told us that he was too hungover to be here. So
yeah,
we
worst
think
hangover ever.
That could have been his best man texting us for all we know.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. So you've got a Jesse conundrum where they end up doing really, really well in Copa America. Greg Berhalter in the United States obviously fail miserably, and Greg loses his job. The very first game following the Copa America is against Canada. And Jesse Marsh in Canada against the U.S. men's national team and Mikey Veras, who's now the San Diego FC head coach. They end up winning quite comfortably, effectively bullying the United States all over the field. And there was zero response in terms of like machismo, like us versus you. Like, don't fucking touch my player. Sorry, Tim, who's not here. So then to go into this group, they were super frustrated because, quite honestly, they got done dirty. Canada got done dirty against Mexico. There was a clear-cut 100% pen. They didn't get it. So they're in the third place match. So then the complexity of this situation, Jesse gets himself tossed during the game. The dramatic arm swing in, like that's all Jesse. That's been Jesse since he was playing at DC United in the early or late 90s, early days of Major League Soccer. He's the same person now as he was as a player. Super high level, high throttle, full intensity, like body language, everything. And I think the players feed off that. I don't think the US players would feed off that, but I think his Canadian players feed off that. So while I agree with your stance on that, I would just say there's like so many underbelly bullying points right now that are happening specific to this region as well. Javier Aguirre and Raul Jimenez and Mexico coming good when they've been the punching bags for the last 3 or 4 years. Like, there's more to this than just like, man, we should have done better. Or, man, if the ball, if Tim Weah would have been on side when Josh Sargent hits the back of the net, or if the deflection off the defender for Josh Sargent goes an inch to the right as opposed to an inch to the left, the goal stands. If my aunt was my uncle, like there's so many different things that could have possibly been different. But ultimately, a lot of disappointment.
But a lot of that does sort of feel like, from the Canadian perspective, that it was a big game, or from
huge,
or from the Panama perspective.
But it should be for the U.S. Like, it's pride. It is pride.
I mean, that's broadly my question. That it didn't seem to be, and I wonder if you sort of got that feeling. I know a lot of you mentioned Clint Dempsey and one or two others earlier on. So, but it could also be that maybe, like, I was thinking a bit about our teams recently and how we keep having this cyclical conversation about Ruben Amorim and Graham Potter and how like it's just not there yet, right? It's not there. And you've got a lot of faith that it'll come good for Amorim. I kind of get the sense that by the time we get to August, September, we'll see what Graham Potter is working on. And what happens is when, say, West Ham played Brentford a couple of weeks ago and it's 2-0 and West Ham didn't have a shot for an hour, it was awful. You think, yeah, okay, but we're going to have another week, then another week, then another week, then a transfer window, then another transfer window.
Have that here.
And the old players are going to go and the new players are going to come in and yada, yada, yada. And like Pochettino is a very intelligent man. I'm sure he's going to work this out, but also he isn't going to now have like another 8 weeks of constantly working.
First experience, yeah.
And so it looked a little bit. No, I mean, again, you've played and coached and whatnot, but it sort of felt like there's bits where there was a crap clearance from an American player, and then it went sort of into the midfield somewhere, and it looked a little bit like, do I go? Are you going to go? Should we not go? And then by the time that it sort of looked at what was going on, the other team's on the attack again. You're a bit like, oh, okay, blimey, what do we do here?
But that's the frustrating part, though. I mean, Matt Turner started the World Cup. Tim Ream started the World Cup. Chris Richards would have been a starter at the World Cup had he not been injured. Yunus Musa started the World Cup. Tyler Adams, Tim Weah, Weston McKennie, Josh Sargent was on that World Cup roster. Like, these are all World Cup players.
Different coach, though. Different coach, different setup.
But listen, man. Again, it's 11 versus 11, the ball's on the field. So this idea of like what the manager's asking you to do, that's great. You can still apply all those principles, but it's still like, are you anticipating or are you reactive? Are you getting stuck in or are you pulling out of a challenge? Are you, like keeping, like if a ball comes over the top, if I'm a defender, I clear the ball. Like there's not, he's not asking me to do anything different. Like if I'm talking about build up out of the back and we're talking about, transitional moments of players rotating and all that stuff. Yeah, maybe. But the reality is also like track the fucking run. Sorry, Tim. Like, I mean, you go to the Canada game, the opening goal for Oluwaseyi. If you watch the top hand side of your screen, there's no balance. There's two guys being like the moment that McKenzie flares out and the ball kind of redirects and Oluwaseyi's by himself. That's because there's two players at the top of the 18-yard box that are unmarked. So again, I get all this. Like, yeah, he needs time. He needs time. He needs time. But like, didn't we bring Mauricio Pochettino? Isn't that part of the conversation? Like we brought Mauricio Pochettino in to make this team better. And in moments of confusion, we assumed like they were going to be those moments where he was going to get that right. Like that was going to elevate it. Like his presence on the sideline alone was going to elevate our performance. His ability to verbalize in these couple of days, what like guys are going to get it. It's going to all snap into place. So we can talk about the loss against Panama in the last second and Matt Turner and not playing and bad position, angle, and the responsibility of Christian Pulisic on the push header that leads to the chance. Should he have cleared it? Should he kept possession? Like there's trickle down effects. But in these minuscule moments of life or death at the highest level, US got punished. They couldn't take advantage. And so in a more sobering moment, in a private conversation, we'd probably get a better understanding of why he elected to go with McKenzie, Carmen Carter-Vickers, Arston, Diego Luna, Patrick Agyemang, and maybe not add a Patrick Schulte to this conversation, or maybe of Marlon Fossey instead of Joe Scally. I know he wanted to see, in particular, Luna to get significant minutes with guys like Weston and Tyler and Christian and Weah, which he certainly did. I mean, if there's any silver lining in this, it's that Diego Luna's a dog. Like, he's got that dog mentality. And I've been telling you for years, like this kid, remember how pissed I was last year about the Olympics? And like, I was off my, like, I was so infuriated and dumbfounded by the stupidity of a decision to even question, like to label the kid as like a troublemaker. And that was like on the backside, like, like you got to find the right fit. And we only have 18 guys. I was like, that's the dumbest I've ever heard. Sorry, Tim. I don't know if you have to blur that out.
Probably.
But, for this kid, I mean, think about this. And I've mentioned this before. This kid grew up in Northern California. Tough environment, right? At a time in which he gets identified for San Jose earthquakes. And there's a lot of options. Like we could have lost Diego Luna. Not just from the game, but from life itself. There's a lot of things happening around Diego Luna. For him to not be chosen by San Jose Earthquakes, to go to El Paso, Texas, on the border of the United States, to play for a USL team, to, as a teenager, be living by himself and betting on himself that he can make this, the path less traveled, to see him play so well that he gets brought into Real Salt Lake, $250,000. The best coach you could possibly have, Pablo Mastroni. Similar in terms of like appetite for destruction and for what it means to compete at the highest level. For every day, Pablo would tell me that Diego would come and start asking questions and be like, yeah, I want to watch tape. Yeah, I want to, like, what should I do in this moment? What should I do to change his dietary needs, to change his strength and conditioning, to think about like the work ethic off the ball to play on a wide left position in the modern game in Major League Soccer, to see the success or the frustration of being left out of this Olympic team, who, by the way, to even get to the Olympics, this fucking kid was the number 10 and the number 9. Sorry, Tim. In under 20 qualifying and the under 20 World Cup. Like that's how good he was. He was playing as a number 9 as in that body type because they didn't have the 9 in the position, and he still excelled. To then being named an all-star on the backside of being left off the Olympic team, to be named the 2024 MLS Young Player of the Year, to go into the January camp with a little bit of a knee issue, got like 20 minutes against Venezuela, starts against Costa Rica, takes a forearm swing to the face, breaks his nose in 16 fucking spots. Sorry, Tim, to the point where he couldn't raise his heart level, like his heartbeat. He couldn't do anything that would raise his heartbeat for the better part of a month coming off of that game. Goes back on the field, gets the assist, comes off at halftime. Pochettino says, yeah, he's got big balls. One of the most iconic moments ever. And then to come into this game, to be with these guys, and to literally have all of the descriptive data points that you would want as a U.S. men's national team fan. I struggle to comprehend a world in which, in those June windows, against Switzerland and against Turkey and Switzerland, that Diego Luna is not in that central midfield engine of a Tyler Adams, a Weston McKennie, a Tim Weah, and a Christian Pulisic going forward, because that kid was fucking unstoppable. Sorry, Tim, during the 95 minutes that were played.
When Dunny starts swearing, you'll find on the program that it's like a run of swearing. Like he'll keep it clean and something will set him off and then he's gone. It's wild. That was wild. That was wild.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
That's the way it is. Once you swear, he keeps going back there, as the old saying goes.
Sorry, Tim.
Listen, before we get on to some other bits, we found a positive there. Well done. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you're enjoying the program, subscribe to the program. If you're listening on Spotify, subscribe on Apple. If you're listening on Apple, subscribe on Spotify. You can also watch the program in full on YouTube, where you should subscribe as well. And on all those platforms, give us a 5-star review, write us a review as well, and we'll read the best ones on the program when we get round to collating them, which I'm realizing I never do, but we will do it and read out some good ones.
My favorite is when they make fun of you, Rennie. That is always my favorite.
I like it when they make fun of you, so that works out really well. I think that's a nice balance.
Little tit for tat. Little tit for tat.
You read out the ones that slag me off, and I'll read out the ones that slag you off. My favorite one I got recently was I'm not listening to Tom Rennie because he supports the Labour Party and America's the greatest country in the world. And I was like, I was asking you about restaurant recommendations, but whatever, it's fine. Fine, glad I asked. Sir, this is a Wendy's. Right. I do want to talk a bit about the stadium because, we've done this a few times now when it comes to US games, when organized not by the US Federation or it's a World Cup qualifier or whatever. They go to venues where hopefully, Mexico are playing next and we'll get more fans in. Now, I understand that from a commercial perspective. It makes sense. There was a lot of people in for the Canada, the Mexico final, not the Canada game. But it looked really bad. It looked really, really bad. Like to have the opening ceremony before the Canada game and the guys doing the whole slash thing. And he puts the arm up in the air with the fireworks. And it was like, nobody was there. If you're listening to this on a train.
Thank you, LA.
There's more people on the train you're on than were in so far at this game. And it just looks. And I take the point entirely, Dunny, that it's organized by CONCACAF and they want to make some cash out of a doubleheader. Fine. But this is supposed to be a home game. And it is a World Cup venue. I think they're playing there twice in the group stage. Correct me if that's wrong. Certainly, I think the opening game is there. And it just looked really, really bad. And I just keep thinking about if this was England against Scotland and it was being played we're going to play it at this venue to do a test event or whatever. This would be a national meltdown if the attendance was like this, because you would have got so much wrong. Everyone's getting sacked. The organizers are getting sacked. The people who do the ticket prices are getting sacked. That's equivalent. I know it's
different.
I know it's different, but this was quite shocking to me.
So I'm going to explain it for the listeners out there. I'm certainly not an apologist, because I have my own issues with CONCACAF and US soccer, because if you really want to build a fan base, you drop the ticket prices, you make it less about the money you more on, and you make it more about creating generational fans. We've had this conversation about Bundesliga fans or English fans and the price of tickets and all of that, a season ticket, and what it means to be a local supporter versus maybe capitalizing on international revenue, Disneyland experiences for incoming fans from around the world. To your point, SoFi, 70,240 people. If you are going to try to fill that venue on a Thursday, you certainly do not schedule a kickoff for 4:00 in the afternoon in Southern California traffic. Even for the second game against Mexico, it was starting to fill in. Now, let's dumb it down. Anytime you have Mexico, you're going to sell the stadium out. Organizers know it. It doesn't matter if it's the organizers behind a standalone event for Mexico, whether that be in Houston or North Carolina, or it's New York or Chicago. They're selling out venues, and you can charge $40, $50 because the passion and the history of Mexican fans here in the United States to see their national team, it's similar to like a Man United fan here in the United States going to see Man United play in the United States.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be a better experience, or at least a fun experience, as opposed to getting on a plane, traveling, passports, hotels, all that fun stuff. So it's just the passion, the culture is completely different. Number two, from a CONCACAF perspective, they're probably mimicking a year out what, and this could have been a dry run through for FIFA as well to pay attention. They certainly were telling us about the field, and the field looks great with the synthetic fiber mixed in with the grass and all the technology, blah, blah, blah. But again, timing. And even on a Sunday, it's going to be tough, right? Everybody wants, and this is also a conversation, bigger picture about Apple and Major League Soccer and Saturday night kickoffs versus getting people to watch on the app and spreading games out. Owners are going to want 7 p.m. kickoffs. That's Saturday night, right? They can sleep in on Sunday unless you got to go to church. But to your point in the Gold Cup, you're going to have AT&T Stadium capacity 80,000. Houston, and that's in Dallas. Houston is going to have NRG 72,000. Shell Energy in Houston is going to be 22,000. So you'll get like Mexico, and then you'll get like Honduras. And it kind of goes around. US Bank, SoFi, Levi Stadium, Glendale, Vegas, BC.
Will they sell,
Place,
Dunny? Will those venues sell out, do you think? Will that be like this, or will there be good numbers? But what about just the US games? Will any of the US games do well, or what's the...
So I don't have the schedule for the US games because the draw hasn't happened yet. So we don't know exactly what stadiums they're going to be at. But if you put US at PayPal Park in San Jose, you put them at Q2 in Austin, you put them in St. Louis at Energizer, you put them at Snapdragon in San Diego, you're gonna get a sellout. You will get a sellout or close to a sellout. But the bigger venues, Dignity Health Sports Park in LA as well. But the bigger venues, listen, those are going to be identified. Those are going to be Mexico. That's going to be Ching. CONCACAF knows they're going to get the credit cards, the parking, the food and beverage revenue. That's what's going to happen. But again, it goes back to the bigger conversation. If we have World Cup qualifying, we're not playing Mexico or Canada. Yeah, well, specific to Mexico, you're not playing in a big city. You're taking them to Columbus, taking them to Cincinnati, taking them to St. Louis, taking them to Nashville, where you can have a better control of tickets. Because if you open up to general public and this is a kid that grew up in Southern California, going to the Coliseum, going to the Rose Bowl, going to the Big A, anytime US Mexico happened, you're going to have 85 to 90% Mexican fans, green jerseys in the stands, and the rest are going to be US fans, trying to figure out a way to support their team.
Last question on this. I wanted to ask you about the other nations in the region that played in this competition, because I was chatting to a Canadian journalist a couple of days ago, and they said Canadian football, Canadian soccer has never been in a better place. They love Jesse Marsch. They love what he's doing. You mentioned it earlier on about him being kind of the right fit for where they are at this moment in time, and his attitude and his energy fits well with this group. And like he did that thing where he's been touring around Canada, and he's been working with different youth groups, and
trying to recreate the infrastructure. Yeah,
he's trying to recreate the infrastructure. Thank you. It's exactly what he's trying to do, and like that's working out really well. And I just wonder your thoughts on this Canada team and where they might go, having seen them in the last couple of days.
Well, I mean, they won qualifying heading into 22. I mean, they were unstoppable. They blew the doors off the U.S. and Mexico. And listen, there's some tricky tests in here when you're talking about Honduras and you're talking about Costa Rica, you're talking about Panama, like even going down to Jamaica in the office in Kingston. Like you're talking about field, and you're talking about political environments, and you're talking about the fan bases, and you're talking about phone calls and wake up calls and fire alarms being pulled, like the shenanigans of qualifying. They were fantastic. They got to World Cup and they got completely taken apart. It started with Croatia. So Herdman was like over analyzing, pre-prepared. And, I think Jesse's great for Canada. He's got a great coaching staff. He had Bradley Carnell in there for a little while in the transition from St. Louis over to Philadelphia. He's taking the Canadian younger coaches that are older players that are transitioning into coaches and doing a great job as well. And listen, I think Jesse's one of those take it or leave it guys. There's a very clear divide with Jesse. You either like Jesse or you hate Jesse. I'm of one of those. I've gotten to know Jesse both on and off the field. I think what he's done, I give him credit because he's bet on himself. He in the midst of him being the New York, New Jersey, or whatever, the New York Red Bulls head coach,
Yeah.
he got his European licensing. Um, I think there was a bit of confusion the summer when he left and Chris Armas took over and he became the assistant to Ralf Rangnick at RB Leipzig. He turned that into a year in Germany, then to take over Salzburg at a time where he had Schlobesthai. He had Erling Haaland. I mean, he had a great team
Good players.
that did a lot of things. He took a chance on himself at RB Leipzig, following up, you know, a, a a fascinating build where a team tried to get away from the Red Bull philosophy, and he was kind of built into that Red Bull. Plus, it was COVID. Took over Leeds after a tough time with Marcelo Bielsa, a loco, a crazy personality. Um, and was given a window in which he brought in a guy like Weston McKennie and unceremoniously let go like 2 or 3 days afterwards. And it was deemed a complete dismantling failure for Leeds United. So, I mean, maybe it's all about timing and right fit. And whatever he saw in Canada matches like the intensity of what he wants on the field, but also the opportunity to build off the field. Canada in a lot of ways, Tom, is almost a club team. The from the U, I mean, everything's kind of set up here, right? Everything is very staunch and rigid for the U.S. system. Canada's, in a lot of ways, it's wide open. So Jesse, I think, has a lot of leverage from what he's done so far, and he's great with the media. It's tough to argue against the results, especially the run he had in Copa America last summer, and in a time in which an organization doesn't have a lot of money. I think he's, from a branding perspective, he's doing everything right. I didn't like the antics on the sideline. I think it was too much for me. He came off, instead of being a leader, it comes off more whiny. That the call doesn't. Now he got screwed in that game against Mexico. So I can understand why he was on edge, specific to the United States. Wasn't a penalty, wasn't close to a penalty, and his reaction gets himself sent off. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think, listen, Canada's in a great place. Jonathan David in particular, Alphonso Davies. I was one of those kicks where it's like, it's third place game.
Yeah. Take him off.
He looked to be fine afterwards, wasn't on crutches. Maybe took himself off. But yeah, they're going to be a pain in the ass for a lot of teams coming up.
The final bit is how good is Jonathan David? Because I feel like he is one of those guys who has been linked with a move to every single club in Europe for the best part of 3 years, and he hasn't left for a long time.
Yeah.
This summer looks like the summer. I have some people saying he's going to be a Barcelona player. I have other people saying he's going to move to the Premier League. He's good enough to play for Man City. He's good enough to play for West Ham. He's good enough to play for Everton. He's going to go to Bayern. Yeah. I mean, everybody. So great goal to win the game. No doubt about that.
Great pivot. Great pivot.
It's classic. It's classic striker play. Yeah. It's classic forward play. We can talk about the McKenzie defending and whatnot, but it's fantastic. So give us a word on him, how good you think he is and where he's going to be come August.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think he's an excellent player. The thing about Jonathan is that we've been talking about him for like 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And it was interesting going back to Thierry Henry. I remember one of the Lille games, he was saying that he's doing it in Ligue 1. Can he do it in Champions League? And can he be consistent with his Champions League goals? And he absolutely has been. He's doing it for both club and country. Now, he's a different type of striker. He's not like the size of Victor Osimhen. He's kind of in that. He's kind of like Endrick-esque, in terms of size and his stuff. He's a little bit shorter, but he's built, he's strong, he's nimble, great center balance, left foot, right foot. I mean, that pivot's perfect showcase. Tight spaces, how he finds the ability to score goals. He checks a lot of boxes. My only concern, and maybe this is different than the Alexander Isak conversation when he went to Newcastle. Alexander Isak physically didn't have the build that we would assume would succeed in Premier League because of Premier League defenders, size, strength, all of this stuff. And Isak was fantastic. For Jonathan David, I just wonder when people are like, putting in their little stuff into their calculator of this is how we find players. The turnover ratio within 37% point not is this guy from Standard Liège, whatever they're doing nowadays. I just wonder if maybe his size is going to
Yeah.
be the biggest thing that he's going to have to overcome in terms of, whatever perceptions, negative perceptions there are against him. But I struggle to comprehend a world that you couldn't drop him into a lot of teams and him,
Yeah.
not look out of place. I think he would look right in place with a lot of teams.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him play a little bit deeper than I'd seen him play before this weekend as well.
Yeah,
So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it.
hybrid.
Great player. I think he'd love that London stadium. Yeah, Barcelona, fine. Listen, I
What
won't
about
do a
Fulkrug?
Do you know what? I actually forgot he was still alive. I
Yeah,
totally forgot. I assumed he retired. Evan Ferguson scored though for Ireland
yeah.
over the
By the way,
weekend.
great news seeing Mikel Antonio right before. We didn't get to touch
Yes.
on this because you were sick, but great to see him back. I mean, for a guy that first off we thought he wasn't going to make it, then we thought that he
Mm,
potentially could lose his leg, and then to see him walk out without crutches, and be shown the love, the proper love he deserves. I
yeah.
thought that was a real touching moment.
Yeah, I was annoyed not to be there actually because I was so ill and I lost my voice and whatnot. So I was in bed for like 4 days, which is why we didn't record the show a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, it was sad to be there. I'm hoping to catch up with Mikel Antonio at some point between now and the end of the season. And hopefully he'll be there next year as well. It'll be a decade at West Ham if he's there for another year. But yeah, I think they're going to pay for his recuperation and recovery, which is great. And we'll just have to
Yeah,
see. We'll have to see. Hopefully, he'll still be around and hopefully he'll still be playing. But yeah, good point, well made. And speaking of comebacks, that does sort of lead me to Raul Jimenez. We've done him a few times on the show. Let's just briefly mention that like he scores the winning penalty for
four
Mexico.
four
Um,
goals, 2 games.
top scorer in the mini tournament, if you like, player of the tournament, and as well, it's a penalty. I hate the penalty because of the way it is. Like you shouldn't be able to keep like going fast, slow, fast, cheeky, medium, fast. Just no, I don't
That's
like
laws of the
that.
game, man. I was
I
having this
know.
conversation. It's
Rewrite the
literally up to the
laws.
referee. Nobody's, but that's the benefit of that thing is because think about this. As a goalkeeper, if it's a two-step shot, you've already picked your side, right? I'm going right or I'm going left,
Mm,
whatever. But like with this little skinny step, hit, go through. Like referees, I've never I cannot recall a moment in which a referee has blown the whistle dead, said, "You've stopped your body motion
yeah,
completely."
never.
Never gonna that's what's the brilliance about it. Like whoever figured it out, good on you.
But someone needs to like rewrite what the laws are because it's
Ain't,
it's
ain't
so
happening,
annoying.
my man.
Though it didn't work out for Ronaldo. See Ronaldo's penalty
Yeah,
for
yeah. Hate
Portugal.
to
Like
see it.
when Bruno's giving it all this and
Yeah.
he's like, he rolled it to the keeper. It was, but just a word on Raul Jimenez. I mean, the first one I thought was impressive as well because like we've spoken about him before, so we won't dwell on it too much. His rejuvenation and renaissance has
Yeah.
been brilliant. But like I thought scoring the header was good because
Yeah.
obviously of the injury that he had and he was wearing that. I think he's grown his hair back now, so you can't see the thing he's got
Well,
on
he's
his
got
head
like, yeah,
now.
it's
And
a
they've
little side headband that just
it,
covers that one spot
it's a
as
lot
opposed
more
to like the full
subtle.
helmet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the original one was not particularly subtle that he had,
Yeah.
like almost like a
The
sleeping
Peter
mask but on the
check.
side. Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't great. But like it just shows like the confidence he's in, the comeback he has had. I
Yeah.
mean, this is right up there with great sports comebacks. It's a movie worthy thing that Raul Jimenez has done.
Yeah. 2022, with Luis. And we, talk about Mikel Antonio. There was like significant concern that this would be a life-changing situation. When you have to crack open the skull and release the pressure, and you're not sure about what the damage is to the brain, much less even think about getting him back on the field.
Yeah,
So
unbelievable.
it goes back to September. He scored against the United States, the game winner, and that coincided with the return of Javier Aguirre, Vasco Aguirre coming back with Rafa Marquez being on the bench and being one of the assistants. To do so also without Chucky Lozano during this window because he's got that hamstring injury with San Diego FC. All of these things. I mean, for Vasco Aguirre, Javier Aguirre coming back and managing Mexico, um, a stroke of genius and yet a stroke of pride, right? Because it's going to always take I mean, the pressure cooker on Mexico is extraordinary from Liga MX managers to the national team managers, just up to a different level. But to come back, to be the manager, to help them guide them through this tough period, to get the results they're getting. And for Raul, who, whether you're a Wolves fan, maybe some Wolves fans could, speak ill of him, but certainly Fulham fans seeing him come good right now, the
Mm,
season that they're having, um, Raul scoring these 4 goals in these 2 games. There's a lot of emotion to it. I'm certainly not a Mexico fan, but from an outsider's perspective, to see them coming on strong is a massive concern for the U.S. men's national team in terms of ego and dominance in the region. But more importantly, importance, I think, for the competition factor, as we've talked about, the failures of the United States,
Yeah.
where Canada is, and certainly where Mexico is. That top three, U.S., I mean, based on even this with Panama, the U.S. is probably fourth right now in terms of the conversations of people, even though that's not really reality. But you got to start paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. Last bit I wanted to bring up with you and see what you thought about it was about. So here's what happened to me this weekend, right? So you're busy working. It's international break, so I'm not working, right? And instead of like chasing down more work or whatever, I try not to work these international breaks. And so what I did this weekend was I put my phone in the cupboard and
Good.
left it in the cupboard the entirety of the weekend. I'm already doing like limits of social media, and there's a couple I've totally banned, and things that I used for
Look
work.
at you. Look at you.
My phone usage was down 63% last week. I had like
Good. That's
unbelievable
awesome.
drop off, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had it in the cupboard. So I had a bunch of like birthday things for my daughter as well. Anyway, I came into work on Monday morning and getting ready for the Sirius XM show. So I didn't know really what had happened. So like had a nice couple of hours of catching up on everything. And something really fun happened in this era of Fabrizio Romano ruining everything for us, right? And that your like surprises, and like your club is going to sign somebody days
Sector
before it
manager.
happens, and you
Yeah.
get the whole here we go thing and all that. Like, fine, we are where we are, right? I don't particularly like it. It's fine. But I got the paper this morning. I'm reading through it, and I did not know Thiago Motta was sacked.
Yeah.
And like, I don't care about the Juve manager, right? I'm not a big Serie A guy. I need to know these things, and I'm interested in talking to people about it, but it's kind of not my league or whatever. But I didn't know. And so I got a real little like old school thrill of
Yeah.
like finding out something had happened. Obviously, there was
What?
some talk he was going to get sacked or whatever, but it was like I
Yeah.
didn't know it before I read it. And I read it and I was like, oh, when did this happen? It was like 2 days ago, and it just totally escaped me. And there was something like really nice about it. Like, there's this legendary episode of The Likely Lads, this kind of 60s, 70s British TV sitcom, where the entire episode is they try and avoid the football scores so they can watch Match of the Day that night. And in the end, like the very last second, someone tells them it ruins the
Somebody
whole thing
blurps
for
it.
them.
Yeah.
They find out actually the game was cancelled is the big joke, and they didn't know about it, and they've been avoiding it all day, and the game was abandoned, right? Anyway, sorry for ruining the episode of The Likely Lads. It was 1972, but it was great. So I really enjoyed that. I love the element of it, and it just sort of Dunny took me back to a more simpler time, like
Yeah.
when like Bill Shankly got the sack retired at Liverpool, and there's a famous like a film crew go to the streets and they're like, Shanks is gone, and they're just like, nah, I don't believe you. You're
Yeah.
lying to me, Newsroom Northwest, because there's no way it could possibly be true. And I think I'll try and do it again if I can. That was great.
That's great, man. Good for you, man. I did that the other day with the US Panama game in the second half because my son was playing shy, was playing a high school game. And I was like, nope, phone. I literally turned the phone off, put it in my pocket, and I want to be present, just trying to be more and more present. Because, these whole little micro bursts of feel good factors and like scroll, oh, awesome, scroll, like next, whatever, wipe, all that. Like just finding myself in the moment more than anything, especially with kids right now, because time is flying. I mean, my kid's 15, almost 13, and 7, and it feels like just yesterday. They're just little kids, and taking them to different shows and sitting down at the movie theaters, making sure they're whispering instead of talking, like all these little fun moments. But yeah, it's good for you. I'm proud of you.
The other bit of the story I liked, which I wanted to get your view on as an American who, of course, only drives everywhere, is that did you know that Igor Tudor, right, he's the new manager. He lives in Croatia. He's Croatian. Played for Juve. He was, I think, Pirlo's number 2 or something over a few
Yeah.
years ago. When they called him after sacking Motta, he got in his car, literally drove out of the house, got in the car and drove 10 hours straight from Croatia, where he lives, to Turin to start working. Literally got out of the house, got in the car and drove. And I thought
You don't
this
want
was
to take a
amazing.
flight? Yeah.
Just walked out, got in. Like, apparently, obviously been there before, so he knew how to get there, whatever. But like, I was really like, wow, it's amazing. And I said this to someone who's American. I was like, do you hear this? He drove 10 hours to get there. And the guy was like, I drive 10 hours every weekend to get to like where I go for the weekend. Like 10 hours to America, just like, yeah,
Nothing.
sure, I do that Friday so I
Yeah.
could be somewhere Saturday. And I was
Yeah.
like, I haven't driven 10 hours cumulative probably this year. Like,
Yeah.
did it impress you
Different
that he did
world.
that or not? No.
Well, yeah, I mean, by the way, side note on Tudor, I looked him up. I looked up some of the storylines. He took over like on March, replacing Maurizio Sarri of Lazio, and he was fired by June, and that was his last job. But I read like his Wikipedia, and it's like Igor Tudor loves to play attacking football. He's expansive, possession based, loves to introduce multiple attacking players, wants to entertain the fans. And I was like, well, I wonder if Juve just read his Wikipedia page because Thiago Motta was the most chased after manager that could have potentially been available in the end of last season. But from a U.S. perspective, obviously, Tim Weah and Weston McKennie, another manager that they're going to have to impress, similar to what we saw Yunus Musa and Christian Pulisic have to do with Sergio Conceição coming over to AC Milan.
He did think they were both like backup right backs, though. So I don't know. Don't know if this is going to be bad for them. They might play in their actual positions.
Expensive football incoming at Juve.
Have you tried right back, says Igor Tudor to McKennie this weekend. We'll find out. We'll find out together as a team. Dunny, thank you very much indeed. Brian Dunseth over there. I'm Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey is going to produce the program. Currently, he's lying in a pool of his own vomit on a train to Kansas City.
Yes.
We hope he will edit this program. Otherwise, you've got the full raw version with all the swearing. Week in the Taco is the podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we are back next week. See you then.